Frazier, if anything. And we'll find out tonight just how good George Foreman is in punching and in taking a punch. I think he hurt Joe Frazier. I think Joe is hurt. Angie Dundee, Ali's trainer, right next to me is saying it. You may hear it. Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! See the countdown for the first round. Foreman has not panicked. Foreman is going about his job. Foreman is all over Joe Frazier. Frazier is down again. Out to end. 2 knockdowns in the first round of Joe Frazier. Down again. No saving. Bunker again. He has Frazier in the corner. Frazier's knees buckled. He is about. He is down. He is down for the 4th time in the fight. George, it's target practice for George Foreman. It is target practice. Frazier is standing. There he goes. It is over. It is over.
What is good, everybody? It is BC Left Hook, and this is Danger Zone Boxing Talk, hosting the Final Bell podcast. Here, as always, with my co-host, Twine B. Liberty. And Twine, you want to tell everybody how you're doing tonight, and it's good to be here with you again.
Yeah, man, it's been a couple weeks, so I mean, I'm glad to be back, doing what we do best and what we love, the sport we love. We definitely want to send a shout out and dedicate this show. Well, actually, want to thank everybody for joining us again. But before we start, we want to dedicate this show to Leon Spinks. Passed away earlier this week, I believe. On the 5th. So, accomplished boxer, gold medalist, heavyweight titleist. You know, what can you say? Rest in peace to the king.
Absolutely, and I want to send a shout out to Corey Spinks and his wife. His wife is on my friends list. She's a very wonderful person. I don't know. We tried a new feature tonight. File share. It looks frozen on our screen, but we're gonna go along and see if it's not on anyone else's. If it's frozen on your end, just would you say something in the comments so maybe we could try to fix that, because it does look like that on our end. But nonetheless, let me see. I'm trying to get it to come off. We're here to talk some boxing, and this week we have some interesting topics. One thing that I want to talk about that wasn't on our list of topics tonight was the performance of Caleb Plant versus Caleb Truax. I thought that Plant looked solid. I think that he was looking more for the knockdown, the knockout, the stoppage win, more so than he has in his previous fights, maybe wanting to make a statement, which did open some things up. I still thought he dominated the fight. There were some other fighters in the division that began to call him out after the fight because of the performance. Honestly, there wasn't nothing in that performance that I took away and thought, hey, this guy can beat Canelo Alvarez. It's my opinion. I still would like to see that fight sometime in the future. Twine, what did you think of that performance, and what did you think of that fight?
I won't say it looked flat, but he definitely did what he was supposed to do. He came, got the win, easy W. So I kind of agree with you on this one. As far as I didn't see anything spectacular that says he puts the same kind of performance on against Canelo. I've seen a lot of the same things I've seen in some of his previous fights as far as fading during stretches. After he seems like he's good for the first 7 rounds, and then he has a little lull and then picks it up again. And that happens with a lot of fighters, so I won't hold that against him. But it was definitely something I noticed again in this fight. Like you said, it left some things open at times. Caleb Truax, definitely a solid fighter. He's been in there with guys, some solid guys. So I can't take anything away from Caleb. I didn't see anything spectacular that says he beats Canelo. I didn't see the movement that I think I needed to see to kind of convince me that, he could box circles around Canelo, basically. So I kind of feel like Canelo could get to him, even, with this height advantage.
I agree 100% with your opinion on that. It is still a fight I'd like to see in the future. Maybe a fight I'm not as high on now as a Canelo Alvarez versus Ramirez fight in the future. But we'll see if that pans out, or even a Charlo fight. I'd much rather see a Charlo-Canelo fight at this point. Again, not taking anything away from Caleb Plant. He did dominate, in my opinion. It just wasn't the performance that a lot of people were hoping for. And if we're going to criticize guys like Devin Haney for not getting the stoppage win, it's got to be shared all around the board. So moving on from there, we're going to jump over to the 135-pound division, where one Bob Arum has made a statement concerning the Teofimo Lopez mandatory defense for his IBF strap. Earlier this week, he said, if somebody outbids it, it's fine. I don't care. It's fine. We get a percentage from Lopez depending on the bid. That's the deal. Every promoter has that in their contract, and so be it. The fight will happen. Somebody will buy it with the winning bid. And so there was some criticism out there concerning the way that Arum conducts business. I don't know if you heard from Keith Thurman. I believe he made some statements. And what do you take away from what Arum said here concerning this fight?
I mean, it was kind of simple to me. It seems like, I've kind of said it in previous weeks since, he's won Lomachenko, beat Lomachenko. I won't say he's feeling himself too much. Okay, I will take it out. I think he's feeling himself a little bit too much as far as, like you said, he wants to move upward as far as not moving back. He wants to bring his money up, his dollar value up, his purse is up. So I think that's kind of what I think the issue is. I was looking at a video earlier as far as what the standard would be for him if he won against Lomachenko, as far as what his purse would be moving forward. And they said it would be something like 1.25 million. And like I said, this was just a random video I came across, so I wasn't able to vet all that as far as other articles. But I thought that was pretty interesting. And, after I saw the comments from Bob Arum, it kind of made me believe, okay, so this is the issue here. He wants a little bit too much money for this Kambosos fight. And I think the only way he gets the kind of money that he wants to get is if it's in Australia, which I think has been an issue in recent weeks, which is why I don't think they've been able to come to a deal. But I think Bob still might have the winning number as far as the purse bid, and they have some money to play with compared to other promoters. But depending on how things are in Australia, as far as it being open up to having live attendance, which is something we talked to with Andrew Maloney, who said they have outdoor stadiums that could pack out 60,000. So if they are able to pull that off, and they have live attendance, I could see George Kambosos' promoter actually winning that as well. But I'm not gonna go against Bob. I think they still have enough to get this fight. And you never know who's gonna win the bid with these purse bids. But I'm kind of surprised that he let it go to this as well. This isn't common from Bob, but we're in a rough time right now with the pandemic. Low on money. I'm not sure what his budget is as far as with ESPN for the upcoming year because of that. I don't think they saw a lot of return on their investment last year. As far as they were able to get some viewership on a couple of fights, but as far as what Top Rank was able to get with no live dates, I think that's in the back of Bob's head right now.
I agree 100%, but this also is why Bob Arum takes criticism. Keith Thurman's comments were basically that Bob Arum don't pay his fighters. You know what I mean? We've seen the struggle to get quality opponents for Terrence Crawford. We see that Teofimo Lopez and his team, they're not taking anything less than what they believe they're worth. Now, whether or not we agree they're worth that is a different subject. It appears they're not going to take anything that they don't believe they're worth. Bob Arum don't like to pay his fighters. We already know that he's in a situation with Terrence Crawford and their camp about them trying to get paid. So this isn't a good look. You know what I mean? And we do know the history of Bob not paying fighters per the fighters, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, Mike Garcia. We've seen these things. So it's out there. Where there's smoke, oftentimes there's fire. I just don't think it's a good look for Arum not to win this purse bid on the best, or really the biggest name outside of Terrence Crawford, maybe a bigger name at this point because of that win over Lomachenko being so fresh. Not winning the purse bid on this, but that's my opinion. I can't tell Bob how to run his business. Obviously, he's a better businessman than I am.
I mean, I kind of want to bring up a side note here. It seems to be kind of early in Teofimo's career for this whole issue with promoters be coming into play. We saw it later with most of the other fighters that ended up leaving that stable. Such as Floyd, Mikey Garcia, Cotto. They were actually around for a lot longer in the top ranked stable, and this seems kind of early for Teofimo to be dealing with this now. So it kind of leads me to believe, I think Teofimo knows what he wants his worth to be, and he's going to push that sooner. A lot of people think Terrence Crawford should have left top rank when he had the ability to a couple years ago. What was that, in 2017, I believe, or 2018 when he re-upped his contract. And I kind of think Teo is going to be the one that pushes the envelope as far as getting out of Dodge a whole lot earlier, just because of, based on his ambition. What are your thoughts on that, Malachi?
I think that's a good possibility. Again, their team seems dead set in taking only what they believe they're worth, and I don't blame them. This is business first. The promoters, they make it obvious. The promoters make it obvious this is a business game. So the fighters ought to be playing the business game as well. They're not going to take anything less than that. And speaking of the fact that, at least in the media, per perception, Bob Arum and Terrence Crawford don't have the best relationship business-wise right now, right? Terrence has been rumored to be looking at possibly going across the street. Now the fighter with the most hype right now in your stable, because he has the biggest win, he could possibly walk as well. That if Daz in and them are going to give them the money they want, that's the direction they'll go. You would have to believe the way that they conduct their business, at least from looking at it from the outside in. So Bob can't afford this. He got to keep one of these superstars. He can't keep building up unless he plans to continue the hype train with Edward Berlanga until they can put him into a real fight. I'm not saying he's a hype job. I'm just saying the hype train, continue the hype train with him until they can get him with a legit fighter. But I would look more towards taking care of Teofimo Lopez and them, because the kid's only 23 and he's got a huge future and he can move up and weight.
I definitely agree with you there. I think it might be time for Bob to hand the reins down to his his son-in-law that's beneath him at top rank.
It might be. I don't know off the top of my head. You know what I mean?
But I definitely think it's time for him to hand off. He's still stuck in the 70s and 80s where the promoters received the bulk of the purse. You've seen guys from the other side of the street to where they're receiving more of the purse than the promoter. That seems to be the new business model. And, Bob still seems to be against it and wants things to be his way. So we'll keep our eye out on this. Like I said, I'm surprised that it came the purse bid with Bob. So, it just shows what Teofimo's fighting for. As far as what he wants, we guarantee purses.
Agreed. All right. Before we move to our next segment, let's take a look at what we got in the comments currently. It's the homie Clarence McLean. He came in and said, "What's up, my brother?" I don't know if it popped up on the screen on their end because it's running is running behind on ours. Then he came back and he said, "Where you guys been? It's been my fault, man. We was on a hiatus, but we're back and we'll be back on schedule." Then Adrian came in. She said, "I'm listening." And Clarence came back and said, Twine, salute. All right.
And everybody, thanks for joining us. Adrian, Clarence, thanks for joining the show.
Absolutely. So moving on to our next topic, Gilberto Ramirez withdraws from the WBC title clash. This was a bit of a disappointment for me because I was looking forward to this. Gilberto Ramirez, for me, is a guy who should be in the top 10, but I can't. I seem to find reasons why not to put him in the top 10. Every time I sit down to make my top 10 list, I have Gilberto in mind, but I find it excuse not to put him in because he doesn't have a marquee win. And then he does stuff like loses his title at the scale. Now he's pulling out of this fight. I need to see him very soon with a top fighter. I'm not saying he's not one of the top fighters, but I need to see him versus one of the top fighters for me to continue to consider him one of the top fighters. It is also not his fault that he is avoided. But Twine, what are your thoughts on him pulling out of this fight?
I share the same sentiment as far as disappointment, and I'll go beyond that. Gilberto is starting to look like a fucking goofball to me. I mean, he's done some very odd things since he moved up in weight to 175. Abandoning the top-ranked stable to where he had in-house fights at 175 with Arthur Beterbiev. He was actually in line. The WBO rule is where when you move up in weight, you automatically become the mandatory, a la Alexander Usyk, Terrence Crawford, Shakur Steve, and many others from the top-ranked stable. I call it the top-ranked handoff, essentially. But when you're a WBO champion and you move up in weight, you automatically become the mandatory to fight that champion at that weight class. So he had that opportunity, but what ended up happening was the WBO created a 4-man tournament, making an eliminator for the WBO title, and he dropped out of that. He fought recently against pretty much a stay busy fight in Mexico. But to turn down this WBC in the interim title fight, which is actually a good fight against Marcus Brown, that would have showed me a lot of what to expect from Gilberto Ramirez at 175, actually. So I'm very disappointed. He's starting to make a lot of bad business decisions, not just business, but things that are going to make him look bad as far as being ranked at 175. If you keep pulling out of stuff, like I said, even leaving top rank, I didn't understand that because he was in position to fight Arthur Beterbiev and would have been able to fight for a unified title easier that way than he is now. So, I mean, he's putting himself in a bad predicament business-wise and for his career with the moves he's been doing. I can only wait for explanation to see why they decided to pull out of this. But, definitely not a good move for him. And, I'm hoping the best for him because I actually like him. Like, he has a good skill set for his size. 6'3", can box on the outside and inside. But, you got to prove it. Like you said, you need to be in there with somebody and pulling out of these big fights, such as the WBO four-fight tourney, eliminator tourney, and this WBC interim title fight, which he pushed for. It's not a good look.
One of the guys continually chasing that Canelo Alvarez fight, and he needs to.
That's out the picture with him Canelo abandoning 175. So that's pretty much done unless Gilberto goes back down to 168. And Canelo's been on this thing to where he says he wouldn't fight another Hispanic fighter again, or he would rather not fight another Hispanic fighter. So I think it's kind of like Gilberto chasing the wild dream right now.
Agree. Hopefully if he doesn't take this fight, we'll get to see him with one of either the top contenders or a champion soon at 175. All right, moving on from that, we had news break that there was COVID-19 has robbed us of another fight. Maxim Vlasov tested positive for COVID, and his fight with Joe Smith Jr. has been canceled. Quickly for me, that this sucks for Joe Smith. He needed this fight. He wanted to get his name back into contention in that division. Would have been a good fight. I don't know that Smith would have won. I probably would have favored him. Sucks. And COVID continues to rain hell on the sports world. But it's what we're living in. Again, for me, it sucks for Joe Smith. Those are my thoughts. What are yours, Twine?
Yeah, I know it has to be heartbreaking for him because, this was his chance to fight for a world title. Mm-hmm. Although vacant, this was his opportunity. He's had some ups and downs in his career, so, it definitely sucks for him. I hope he still remains in contention, or he still remains mandatory, or for whatever they're going to do to remake this, because, like I said, this was for a vacant title. So I don't know if they're just going to postpone the fight or bring in another opponent down the road. But hopefully we get to see this in the near future still, because I would love to see Joe Smith at least come down with one world title in his career. He's always in it, gave fans entertainment, fought through a lot of adversity, even with a broken jaw, torn shoulder, injuries. He's fought through all that in his fights previously, and, he's given us entertaining fights. And, he still works a construction job. So, I definitely think this would have put him in another level as far as comfortability in life. So, my heart's hurting for him. And we want to wish Maxim Vlasov the best in getting his health back together and recovering from COVID as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of it, this is out to Anthony Stack Saldana and their family for the loss of their matriarch due to COVID earlier this year. Awesome individual. Again, condolences. Sadly, COVID is still robbing people of their family members, and praying that the vaccine hits everyone soon if they're choosing to take it. Not to get political here, but let's move on to something that surprised me a bit. And that was when Mark Breland broke some of his silence and responded to some of the accusations from Deontay Wilder. Quote, stating, in fact, I quote, his career is done. Speaking of him, basically stating that he's never learned anything in the gym. That he basically wants a bunch of yes men around him. That has been a question that people have brought up in the past. Is he not improving fundamentally because he's keeping a bunch of yes men around him? Now he seems to maybe be conforming that. And the reason I say it shocked me is because it just didn't seem like the character of Mark Breland that we've seen. He's a very humble, knowledgeable individual. So it surprised me a little bit to see him clap back. But hey, you know what? When you're throwing around accusations the way that Deontay Wilder has been since that loss to Tyson Fury, which I really believe is still beating him mentally, I can't blame Mark for clapping back in that manner. What were your thoughts on the statements?
I've been paying attention to a lot of things as far as this, especially in the groups. There's been some back and forth and mixed feelings as far as this. One of my biggest takeaways was that Deontay Wilder was surprised that Breland actually came out and did this interview. He's like, where's this coming from? And, as a man, you can only take so much. Deontay has poured gasoline on this man's name and, kind of disrespected him, and made him out to be something that, we both know he's not. I've had the occasion of talking to Mark a couple times while he was still Deontay's trainer. And like you said, he's a humble individual, very quiet. He knows the sport well, especially the business side. So I mean, like for him to come out and actually do an interview about this, which I didn't think he was going to ever address, but I mean, I'm glad he did. He even did a Facebook post earlier in the week to try and clarify some things because he thinks it was spun the wrong way as far as the outlet or platform that it was done on. But, as far as the chatter I've seen in the groups, like people are questioning why he chose a UK outlet to do this interview, which leads them to further suspicions that he was, the conspiracy theories as far as the fight, with the water bottle and all that stuff and stopping it. It's just a lot of weird stuff going on in the groups as far as this, but I'm not mad as far as Mark actually, he deserved this chance to speak his piece, and I'm glad he did it. But at the same time, it actually shed light on some of the things as far as Wilder's camp that I wasn't necessarily privy to, and most other people weren't. Most of us didn't think Jay Diaz was worthy of being his trainer anyway. Like, I think he's incompetent as hell. But to see what was actually going on and hear details of how bad it was, and, he doesn't want to train. He doesn't feel like hitting the heavy bag. He doesn't want to run. Like, it was real interesting to hear those kind of things come out. And considering, the accomplishments of Wilder in his career being, a latecomer to the sport, winning a bronze medal, actually becoming breaking the record for 10 defenses as a titleist at heavyweight. I'm surprised he was able to do all that, considering he hasn't put in the work that a lot of guys do since they're kids, essentially. Most boxers come up from amateurs at an early age or even early teens, and Deontay defied all that. So, I mean, it makes it a lot more impressive to me that he was able to accomplish these things. But, like, dude, you got to put in the work. Just relying on your power, it's not going to do it. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing them get back in the ring. I would love to see Coach Mark actually link up with somebody else, but, Deontay was a special project for him. I'm not sure if he wants to throw himself in those shoes again because of the outcome. But I would love to see Mark, working with somebody else as well.
I agreed, and we'll see where it goes in the future. Real quick before we move into our breakdowns of the upcoming fights. Let me take a look. We have a comment in the comments, and it's from the beautiful Metzi Santana. And she says, "Babe, I'm here." She's speaking to me. It's nice to see you, boo. And I will be talking to you after the show. You have a great one.
I was about to say. Malachi got love connections on the show. What's going on?
That's my boo.
Okay.
But moving on, we do have a fight this weekend, and that is Patrick Texeira, the WBO Super Welterweight World Champion, will be defending his strap for the first time as champion versus Brian Carlos Castano. Now Texeira is 31-1. His previous fight, a unanimous decision win over Carlos Adams, was originally for the interim strap. They had eventually elevated him up. Now, there's a lot of people actually favoring Brian that I've seen. Now, Patrick's trainer, Roger Romo, is a friend of the show. He's been on, I think, 3 times. Excellent young trainer. I fully believe in him. I am going to take Patrick in the fight. I'm kicking it over you, Twine. I want you to break it down for me and give me the keys to victory for each fighter.
So for Texeira, he actually needs to use his height in this one. Use his long reach in his height. Keep him on the outside. Castano likes to get inside of you. Like he's a grinding type of fighter, pressure fighter, and he likes to put you on the ropes and go to work. We've seen him do this against Lara. This is pretty much his style. So Texeira just needs to keep him on the outside and keep touching him with that jab. Make this an easy fight if he can. But like I said, Castano was good at navigating against guys that even move. But I think Texeira has a key element as far as that reach and height to where it might be a little bit more difficult. The movement was there when we saw him against who's the guy that he beat for the title, for the interim title. I can't think of his name, the Dominican fighter. But nevertheless, Texeira can make this an easy fight if he keeps his jab, he keeps him on the outside. He has to put enough power on him to keep Castano at bay. So, I mean, that's my one thing I worry about. I've never considered Texeira necessarily a power puncher. So, I mean, if Castano doesn't respect his power, it might be an issue. But, you know, Roger was on the show before and said they sparred each other in the past, and Texeira got the best of it. So, I mean, that was a pretty interesting takeaway from our last interview with Roger. Give him a shout out. Like you said, he's a close friend of the show. But I'm actually going to go with Castano. From what I've seen of him, I feel like he's going to make this a dog fight any way he can. And, you know, to the winner, whoever may be, let's see that unification for Undisputed at 154, baby.
I agree. Now, as you did state, there is some size advantages for Patrick in this fight. He is 5'11". Castano is 5'7". I'm going to take Patrick. I believe that they're going to have a game plan to keep Castano at bay. He is a bulldog, and if he does get inside of the taller champion, there could be some trouble. But I'm going to take Patrick. I actually think he's going to be able to keep him on the outside, and I think he's going to catch him. And I'm going to pick a TKO victory for him around the 7th or 8th round. Quick, go back to the comments before moving on to our next fight. And it is once again from the beautiful Mechi Santana telling me she loves me, and I love you too. All right. And moving on, another big fight this weekend, and that is for the IBF Super Featherweight Championship between Jojo Diaz and Rakhimov. I have such a problem saying these names sometimes. Now, this isn't the fight a lot of people were wanting from Diaz. There were some names tossed around that other people would have liked to have seen him in. However, I do believe this is a quality fight, and I think it's a dangerous fight for him. I'm going to kick it over to you first, and once again, give me both keys to victories for the two here.
First, let's bring up an Let's bring up an interesting thing that occurred today. Jojo Diaz missed weight by 3 pounds and was forced to vacate his title on the scale. So that's not a good look for him already coming into this fight. Not sure how dedicated he was as far as during training, or, you know, it's the lingering effects of COVID. You know, we've seen David Benavidez go through the same thing, you know, as the first fight coming back from COVID. You know, he had the same issue as far as having to vacate and came in way over. As far as Jojo, like they wouldn't even allow him to try and cut any more weight because he was so far over. So, I mean, he's going to come in there having a major size advantage after rehydrating even more. I hate to see him have to lose his belt on the scale in only his first defense. But I still would pick him to win this fight just based on his activity level. You know, he has a high output or higher volume for most fighters as far as at 130 right now. So I'll expect him to take that size advantage in there and still, you know, be able to do his thing. I kind of agree with you. There were some other fights on the table that people wanted to see, such as a rematch against Tevin Farmer or, you know, one of the other champs at 130. But, you know, it's not possible now during this COVID, and it was his first fight back. I wouldn't want to rush him back into something big immediately for his first defense anyway. So I think this was the perfect fight for him to come back in, and I still think he'll win just based on his high output and high volume.
I think this is a dangerous fight for Jojo. The Russian does have a 2-inch height advantage on him. The Russian has he's 15-0, but he has 12 KOs. He's just an unknown commodity. I took a look at him. I think that he's the type of fighter that can give Jojo some real problems, get into a slugfest, which we know he is capable of doing. And if he does, in the homie catches him, there could be some problems, could be some fireworks in this. I am going to stick with Jojo. I just think the opponent in this instance is a live dog.
Yeah, I would definitely
be very interesting.
I definitely agree. The most notable name I've seen from him as far as fighting is Robinson Castellanos, who's actually one of my favorite fighters. A journeyman, Orlando Salido type, who, he's been in a lot of dog fights and giving people a lot of problems. So, I mean, this guy's power is real. So I definitely agree with you there. He can make things interesting, especially with Jojo Diaz. The concern I have over his conditioning coming into this fight, but like you said, we both still favor Diaz, but this is definitely a live dog right here.
Mm-hmm. All right. Before we move on to the next and last fight that we'll be going over tonight, I just see a new comment in the section. It was from Jamie Perrin, and he has said, question mark. Jamie, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. If you'll write down what you're talking about in the comments, I'll pull it up and we'll address it after we get into our next fight. Moving on from there, one former IBF champion, Josh Warrington, is taking on Lara this weekend as well. As I stated, former, because we seen the Leeds Warrior gave up his IBF strap because he didn't want to fight the mandatory defense. When you pull something like that, I would look for you to take a bit better of opponent than Lara, although Lara is quality, don't get me wrong. But when you pull a move like that, I expect to have found your way into at least another title fight or title elimination. But nonetheless, it is a good fight. I do favor Josh in this fight. What do you expect from Josh in this fight, and who are you picking?
I haven't seen much of Mauricio Lara, so I mean, I can't necessarily dog him out or give a high assessment on him as far as what to expect from him. But as far as the things going on with Warrington, he's had some interesting things going on with his career right now. As far as he recently switched over to Eddie Hearn as his promoter. After being with Frank Warren for many years, or during the high parts of his career, when he won his belt and defended it the first time against Kid Galahad. With that being said, I had to give Mauricio, he's a tough Mexican fighter. So I always give them their chances and say that, they come to fight. I definitely think this is going to be a slugfest. It's going to be a slugfest. The style Warrington brings to the table as far as his output, and nothing but power punches. It's going to be a war. That's what I'm expecting from this one. And I probably expect Warrington to get the better of this decision based on it being in the UK. So, I mean, I'm giving them the nod just based on that. But, I mean, I really don't know what to expect outside of it being a slugfest because I haven't seen enough of Lara. But, like they say, Mexican style, they all come to fight and they're willing to put their lives on the line, as all fighters do. Warrington, he needs to try and avoid getting in the slugfest if possible. But, that's just his style. He's unconventional. And, he tends to prefer the high output and being in slugfest. But I agree with you as far as this isn't necessarily the fight I wanted to see him take if he's going to vacate. And, good luck to him in climbing up the ladder and seeing what else happens. There's no incentive for anybody to fight him right now until he's in line to, he puts himself in the rankings with one of the other organizations. I definitely think it was a bad decision for him to drop the belt, but I can understand. I didn't want to see another Kid Galahad fight neither. That was the whatever was it, the IBF? They were pretty wrong. Yeah, the IBF was wrong for that decision. And trying to order it again. But they're the most strict of all the sanctioning bodies. they hold to their word, and that's what I respect them for. So, I mean,
well, he dropped it because he didn't want to fight.
Galahad, yeah.
No, it was X-Can, which is like X-Can.
No, Kanju. That was actually Kanju is the WBA regular champion.
Yeah,
at 126, and that was the fight that he actually wanted. But the IBF wasn't going for it, and Kanju actually pulled out because of COVID. He didn't think he would be able to travel at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to see a rematch of that fight either. I think Lara is a live dog, at least per his knockout percentage is much higher than Warrington's. I think he's only has 7 knockouts or 7 stoppage wins in his 30 or 31 victories. But here's a guy in Warrington, a lot like Ramirez for me, that needs a statement win, because a lot of what we've seen him in his career has been criticism from fans because of his decisions not to fight certain guys. However, he seems to want to call them out in social media and make statements in interviews that never seem to get followed on. It seems like he's more about trying to catch clout off of someone's name than actually fight them at times. He could have fought a Stevenson. I believe he threw, just like Diaz. Or what about, I'm sorry, I said Stevenson, but Gary Russell. He could have fought Gary Russell. Gary didn't have a fight. He could have fought Gary Russell. That would have been a monster fight.
Gary's been looking for a big fight, and he definitely would have been up for it. Yeah. There's actually some talks about that as well. Like there's a couple, maybe like a week or two ago, Eddie Hearn and actually Gary spoke on it, and then Josh Warrington spoke on it earlier in this week. Since it's his fight week, he addressed the comments. Gary felt like it was a disrespectful offer. I mean, I can't tell another, the whole Teofimo thing. I can't tell another man what to expect of his purse or not as far as his worth. Supposedly the offer was a flat out $1 million. If you go back and look at Gary Russell's career recently, he's been making over $1 million since he fought Jojo Diaz. So, I mean, I guess he considered that a little bit disrespectful, especially if he was going to have to fight Warrington across the pond, which was a huge possibility. With us being shut down and not having many places where, you can have live gate here in the U.S. still. So I can't really speak on, what somebody's worth. I can't question any of that, but based on his recent career, going back to Jojo Diaz fight, he's been clearing $1 million in purses. And, as most PBC fighters, they get a piece of everything, live gate, all that merch. We've had these conversations with a couple of guys that are affiliated with PBC. Mm-hmm. So if he felt he was disrespected by the offer, I can't hold that against him. I know it's definitely a fight he wanted. And, I definitely agree. Josh Warrington has been kind of selective in his opponents, ever since the Carl Frampton fight, other than Kid Galahad, which was a mandatory.
Agreed. And I 100% agree with you. The fans need to stop pocket watching. You know what I mean? Stop worrying about what another man's making, or whether or not they believe an offer is worth them. It's not ducking. Again, this is business. All right. So that's all our topics for the night. But before we go, I want to close out on a quick rant, if you don't mind, Twine.
No, go ahead.
And it deals with the previous topic. Josh Warrington dropped the IBF strap. Do it in the garbage, because they wanted what was best for them and not what was best for him. And because of situations like this, the value of actually having the title is no longer there. That's because you have watered down the product. You've thrown belt after belt after belt in every division, Fans have a hard time even knowing who's the real world champion, and it's your fault, organizing bodies. So you guys need to clean it up. You need to get rid of these super belts, these franchise belts. Get back to having one belt per organization, per division, and stop getting in the way of big unification fights. Make us fans happy. That's my rant for the night. And this was Danger Zone Boxing Talk, hosting the final bell, and we out.